Every 60 seconds, human beings create enough new information to fill 100,000 books. We live in a world where your great-grandparents consumed less information in their whole lives than we do in just one single day. So what's my point? What am I rambling on about? Well, in a world where we're constantly given new information on how we should be eating, how we should be running our finances, how we should be running our relationships, how we should be running our lives, one thing we're not told is how to think in a world of constant information. So in this video, I'm going to break down how we should be thinking in a world where we're given so much information to find out, should we be accepting things as part of our belief system, or should we be throwing things aside and disregarding them as fake news or marketing? Now, before we jump in, I want to share with you a piece of research that I found fascinating and should probably inform why you should listen to the rest of the video. Recent neuroscience research from MIT has shown that our brains have actually started developing a new neural pathway to cope with this information overload. They're calling it digital adaptation syndrome, where our minds are literally rewiring themselves to process more information faster than ever before, leading to improved memory and cognitive function, particularly in people under 35. Except, it's important to note something. I just completely made that up. But you probably believed it, and it had all the hallmarks of information that we're seeing day to day. The stuff that's trying to persuade you to buy the pill, to subscribe to the thing, to do the thing. It had all the bits that it needs to get credibility and intercept your brain in a world that is very, very hackable. It sounded scientific, came from a trusted institution, explained something you've noticed in your own life, and honestly, part of you probably wanted it to be true. And that's the trick with some of this stuff. It tends to lean into nothing extreme, but the things that we want to believe. So let's get into it. What I really want to give you in this video is a very, very simple framework that you can follow to look at information objectively. And it's something that you can follow for bits of TikTok information, news articles, things you're seeing on LinkedIn or social media, and ask yourself the fundamental questions around, do I want this to be part of my core beliefs? So let's get into it. We're going to talk about the framework THINK, T-H-I-N-K. Step one in THINK is T for test the source. So we might be seeing a piece of information that's telling us, here's how we should be eating, here's how we should be exercising, here's how we should be thinking about money, whatever it may be. The first thing we need to do is test this framework. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to ask ourselves, who's sharing this information? What's their level of expertise? Do they have potential biases or conflicts of interest? And this is a really interesting one. If someone persuades you of the fact that they're trying to prove, do they stand to make any money from it? That's a really common one. Often if we follow the money, we'll find that, okay, there's some sort of incentive here. They're trying to make me buy their product, and that's why they're trying to persuade me so extremely. What's their track record of accuracy, and are they transparent about their methods? Truly testing the source of the information. Who is the person giving it me? What are their affiliations? Are they behind a company? And is there any incentive in them persuading me? Ask yourself, what do they get out of persuading you of that fact? Next up, it's H for hunt. So hunt is going to ask us to hunt down the data. And what we're looking for here is what backs up their claim. And it's important here to be very, very objective. We have something in our brains called confirmation bias. If this is something that we've seen that we actually want to agree with, we'll find that a data of 52% suddenly makes something absolute, when in fact it makes things almost right almost wrong. So it's important when we go into this that we go into it with an objective mindset. So we want to be looking at what data supports this claim. Is the evidence verifiable? Are there primary sources of information? As in, is there a primary source of information? Does it come from just one source, one area that can be proven, rather than multiple that kind of all go against each other and kind of don't feed into each other? Has this been peer reviewed or independently verified? Independently and peer reviewed meaning, has it been verified by someone who doesn't stand to make money from convincing you? Very, 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 very important. And does the evidence actually support the conclusion? It's not uncommon for people to take a piece of evidence, slightly skew it and give it some artistic license, and then bundle it up as something that sounds very absolute and 100%. So does the data and the evidence actually support what you're being told? Really fundamental question to ask yourself, and be very, very objective. We're at I now. So I would be for investigate. And really what we're looking for is, can we investigate alternatives? And rather than going straight for, well, why would this not be correct? Why would this not be accurate? I'm actually going to ask you to do something called the steel man. So the steel man is, I want you to make the strongest possible argument that the thing that you found that you want to believe is true. Start from the point where it's the absolute strongest. So don't try and trick your brain into not believing everything that it hears. Instead, make sure that it's the strongest possible argument first. Next, we're going to look into what are the opposing viewpoints. So if there was a counter opinion to this, what would it be? And we're going to explore that and find out where those different counterpoints might come from and how verifiable they are. So going over the previous steps that we've gone over. Now, the next couple of bits are going to be really important, and they require a level of self-awareness. So what we're going to look at are, what other explanations could exist? That's a really, really important one. What other explanations could exist? Can you think of any other explanations that could exist around why this information might be false or why it might be true? So what other explanations are there? Next up, are there cognitive biases that are affecting your own interpretation? So I talked about confirmation bias, which is actually looking for information actively that reinforces your own beliefs. But there's also things like reactance. So if someone's trying to persuade you in one way, you might go the other way. There's also recency bias. So if you had an argument with your boss in the morning and you then saw a video that said all bosses are bad, you should quit your job immediately, how much more likely are you to lean on the most recent piece of information in your own life? So asking yourself what biases could be affecting my beliefs here is, again, a really, really, really important piece of the puzzle. And then the last one on this point is, what would disprove my claim? So what would have to be true to make this claim not accurate? And you really, really want to go down the rabbit hole with that one. So what would disprove it? And then is there any way that that could be true? So we're now at N in the think framework. So N is for navigate complexity. So does this pass the simplicity test? When ideas get very, very complicated, when we can't condense them down to their simplest form, it's typically a symptom of an idea that's trying to cover something up. So there's a lot of this in media at the moment. I think about people like Jordan Peterson will perhaps give you a piece of information that sounds very, very intellectual. It will use language purposefully and over-intellectualize it to make you think, well, it must be true. Or actually sometimes to make you feel like a bit of an idiot and make you feel like, well, maybe I should understand that. He sounds more clever than me. There's some credibility that comes behind that. And look, I'm not anti-Jordan Peterson. I'm just saying that's particularly a scenario that I see pop up more often than not when claims are disproven. This idea of complexity, meaning that something is right, is actually not true. If you can get something down to its very simplest form and it's still true, that's often a really, really good sign. So the easiest way to navigate the complexity is to ask yourself a question that, if any salespeople are watching this, you should maybe be asking your clients or the business that you work for. Imagine I'm a 5-year-old. Explain it to me now. If I was a 5-year-old, how would you explain this? You want things explained in their simplest form. Bruce Lee has a great quote, "Simplicity is the key to brilliance," and he was a bloody good lad. And lastly, in the think equation is K for know your limits. So we're going to go back to asking ourselves, what are our own biases? What is our emotional investment in this information? So if it's a piece of information you feel particularly emotional about that you've seen that you want to believe, rather than believing it automatically, you should question the emotion. Why do you want the information to be true? Or even why do you want the information to be false? So questioning your own emotions is a key thing. If we imagine life as a very black and white picture, you live, you die, the emotions tend to colour the picture, but not all the colours in that picture are accurate. Sometimes you're adding things that not only aren't there, but were never intended to be there. And then the last three on this. Do I have the expertise to evaluate this properly? Am I an expert in the space? If it's something about diet, if it's something about the medical field, am I a doctor? Am I a consultant? If it's something about delivering a baby or the way you should raise a child, do I have anything other than my armchair TikTok viewing to inform me as an expert there? Perhaps not. And the last two, what don't I know? Having that ability to reflect on what you don't know. Socrates probably said it best when he said, "The only thing I know is that I don't know anything." So going into things not as the expert, but with the willingness to learn will tend to broaden your horizons. And then when do I defer to the expert? So when is the point where I say, actually, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm so interested in the topic that I'm going to seek out other experts, rather than just picking one piece of information and then building my hill to die on a 60-second short that I saw somewhere. So there we have it. That's the think framework. And I think we have a massive obligation here for probably the generation just before me, for our children, to make sure that in a world of so much information that we're actually able to think before we take things in as gospel. I don't want to get all conspiratorial about it, but it's very easy in the algorithm world to put us into these little tribes. So to say, right, you're a right-wing person, you're a left-wing person. If you have spent any time on the internet, you'll realise that it's very easy to put you in tribes of people who believe what you believe. Really what we should be doing to be a well-rounded, professional human being is asking ourselves these tough questions and challenging our own beliefs as we go. So I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you took a belief in as gospel without first thinking about it? And then truly, in a world full of so much information, do you know how to think? So I hope you liked the video, probably something a little bit different there. I just thought it was important to kind of put something like this out there. If you like this and other things that we do, chuck me a comment, tell me what else you want to see, like this video, share it, all that good stuff. But probably the most important thing at the minute for us is hitting that subscribe. So, I've been Zach, the Biceps Thompson. Thank you all.